So is the eating of newborn babies considered a delicacy in certain esoteric traditions?
I mean, that is exactly the kind of question that just forces the air right out of your lungs.
Yeah.
It's visceral. It's deeply disturbing. And frankly, it completely short circuits our baseline understanding of what spirituality is even supposed to be.
Right, because I remember looking at that line in the source material we're going through today, and my very first instinct was to just close the laptop and walk away.
I don't blame you.
Because, when we decide to dig into theology or mysticism or ancient Eastern traditions, there's this unspoken contract we expect to be fulfilled.
Oh, absolutely. We expect comfort.
Exactly. We're looking for the universe to be framed as this benevolent, loving mother figure who ultimately has our best interests at heart.
Right. The warm glow.
Yeah, the warm glow. But then you encounter the texts we are unpacking today, and that comforting image is just completely shattered. We're looking at a spiritual landscape that isn't a nursery. It's a slaughterhouse.
It really is a radical paradigm shift. But, before we go any further, we need to make an agreement with you listening to this deep dive right now.
Definitely.
The objective here is absolutely not fear-mongering. We are not here to endorse these viewpoints, and we are emphatically not presenting these legends or modern rumors as objective, verifiable truth.
No, not at all.
We are just stepping into the architecture of a very specific, very dark belief system to see how it operates.
Right. We're acting as impartial observers here. No sides are being taken. No validation is being handed out to any political or social groups. We're simply unpacking the mechanics of a cosmological theory that is, frankly, as fascinating as it is terrifying.
Exactly. We are analyzing what you could accurately describe as the apex predator theory of the universe.
The apex predator theory, just that name alone.
Right. It's a framework that looks at the cosmos not as an environment designed for human enlightenment, but as a high-frequency interdimensional food chain.
Right.
And spoiler alert, humanity is not sitting at the top of it.
Which is terrifying. But to understand how a theory like this even takes shape, we really have to look at the architect behind the claims we're studying today.
Yes.
The source material comes from a figure who refers to himself as Osman, the blind Muslim yogi.
Just let those words sit for a second.
I know, right? The phrase blind Muslim yogi is just a walking paradox. It crosses intense religious boundaries, physical limitations, and entirely different spiritual disciplines.
It really does.
So today we're going to explore his background, his confrontation with some of the darkest modern rumors circulating right now, his stubbornly literalist reading of ancient mysticism, and a historical military legend that defies all logical explanation.
And finally, we'll look at how he uses this terrifying worldview to fuel a highly regimented scientific approach to bioenergy healing.
Right, because the juxtaposition is what makes him such a compelling subject for analysis in the first place. You have a man who has dedicated his entire existence to healing the human body, to literally keeping people alive in critical scenarios.
Yeah, while simultaneously holding a cosmological view that suggests humanity is essentially just cosmic prey.
Exactly. And to understand how a human mind holds those two conflicting realities without fracturing, we have to start by examining his credentials.
And the sheer, staggering neurobiological discipline of his life.
Because that's the first question you ask, right?
Hey.
If you're listening, you're probably wondering, why should I care about Osman's theories? Why isn't this just some guy in his basement making up sci-fi horror stories?
Right, the credibility question.
Yeah. And it's because he operates on the absolute bleeding edge of practical application. He describes himself as a master-level bioenergy healer, but he isn't dealing with people who just want to, align their chakras on a weekend retreat.
Not at all.
He specializes in the hardest possible cases. We're talking critical care, post-surgical recovery, and terminal illnesses.
He is operating on the front lines of severe biological failure, and his methodology is where things get incredibly dense from a theoretical physics standpoint.
Oh, the physics stuff is wild.
It is, because he claims to execute telepathic or remote healing capabilities, but he doesn't use the standard mystical vocabulary to explain it.
Right, no crystal talk.
Exactly. He grounds his practice firmly in the principles of non-local quantum entanglement.
Which means he completely bypasses classical physics here. He isn't talking about standard biofeedback or placing his hands on a patient to generate heat.
No.
He's relying strictly on the quantum mechanical phenomenon where two systems become inextricably linked, regardless of the physical distance between them.
Einstein's spooky action at a distance.
Yes. Spooky action at a distance. He is treating his own highly disciplined biofield and the patient's failing nervous system as entangled particles that instantly mirror each other.
Yeah, so in standard quantum physics, if you change the spin of one entangled particle, the other particle light years away
Right.
instantly changes its spin to match.
Instantly.
Right, there is no physical tether. The connection exists outside of our standard understanding of space-time.
Yeah.
And Osman is taking that subatomic mechanic and scaling it up to macroscopic biological systems.
Which is a huge leap.
It's massive. He is suggesting that through extreme cognitive discipline, a healer can phase lock their nervous system with a patient across the globe, forcing the patient's chaotic, failing biology to entrain to the healer's stabilized frequency.
I was reading his timeline in the sources, trying to figure out how someone even begins to claim they can manipulate quantum fields with their brain, and the numbers are just staggering.
They really are.
He claims 50 years of continuous experience in advanced yoga and meditation. But the detail that really made me pause was his claim that he attained his first samadhi at the age of 19.
Samadhi being the pinnacle state in yogic tradition.
Right, the ultimate goal.
Yeah, it's the point of absolute absorption, where the illusion of the individual ego completely dissolves into the object of meditation. Attaining that state is traditionally viewed as the culmination of decades of relentless asceticism.
Exactly. If you read the foundational text, hitting a true state of samadhi at 19 is like, I don't know, a physicist solving the unified field theory while they're still a sophomore in high school.
That's a great analogy.
It implies an innate neurological wiring that is fundamentally alien to the average human experience. But then you look at his regimen and you realize it wasn't just innate talent.
No, he worked for it.
He essentially brute forced his neurobiology. He states that in the earlier stages of his life, he practiced up to 18 hours a day.
The math on that is physically punishing.
18 hours.
Right. 18 hours of practice leaves exactly 6 hours for sleep, hydration, caloric intake, and basic biological functions.
That's barely enough time to just exist.
Exactly. Everything else is entirely consumed by directed cognitive focus. If we look at this through the lens of modern neuroscience, practicing intense internal energy work for 18 hours a day is a form of extreme sensory deprivation married to hyperamplification of internal stimuli.
So you are systematically shutting off the outside world to turn the volume of your internal nervous system up to a deafening roar.
Precisely. The impact on brain plasticity would be monumental. The default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for our wandering thoughts, our sense of self, our daily anxieties, would be essentially starved of oxygen and rewired.
Wow.
He is forcing his neural pathways to exist almost permanently in a state of hyper-aroused, non-local awareness.
And we can't forget the physical aspect of this.
Right, the blindness.
Yeah. When you factor in the crucial detail that Osman is blind, the implications just multiply exponentially. The human visual cortex requires massive amounts of processing power.
It's a huge part of the brain.
So without visual data demanding that cognitive load, his brain is free to entirely redirect that computational power towards sensing subtle thermal, energetic, and atmospheric shifts.
It is a completely different operating system for reality.
Yeah, the way I've been trying to conceptualize this is to look at ultra-endurance athletes or like Tier 1 military operators.
Okay.
Like a Navy SEAL can tread water in freezing ocean temperatures for 12 hours, not because their physical body isn't freezing, but because they have neurologically categorized the pain differently.
They've hacked the pain response.
Right. They operate on a threshold of suffering that would literally kill an average person via shock. Osman is doing that, but with the architecture of human consciousness. Even now, half a century later, he says he practices 8 to 10 hours a day, which he refers to as sharpening the sword.
Sharpening the sword is a remarkably aggressive metaphor for meditation.
It really is. You usually hear about finding inner peace, not sharpening weapons.
Right. It tells you everything you need to know about how he views his capability. It isn't a passive gift from the universe.
Yeah.
It is a lethal, highly tuned biological instrument.
Yeah.
And like any honed weapon, it will dull and rust if it isn't constantly ground against a whetstone of grueling discipline. It requires relentless, painful maintenance.
Which naturally leads to the most jarring pivot in this entire deep dive.
Here we go.
Because you have a man whose entire waking life revolves around the intense, altruistic discipline of healing the sick. So how does a mind that disciplined end up zeroing in on grotesque modern rumors about the consumption of human infants?
It's a huge leap.
Because that specific horrifying rumor is the inciting incident for the entire cosmology he builds.
It seems contradictory until you realize he is looking for the underlying mechanics of human suffering. Osman states that he was appalled to encounter a very modern, fiercely persistent belief circulating in various circles.
And this is the part that's hard to even talk about.
It is. The rumor asserts that a highly secretive, wealthy class of elites views the consumption of human newborn fetuses, specifically those from unwanted pregnancies or abortions, as a literal delicacy.
And the specific vocabulary he highlights from the rumor is what makes it so utterly sickening. The analogy used in these circles is veal. Veal is the meat of a newborn calf, prized by high-end chefs specifically because the muscles haven't had time to develop, making the meat incredibly tender. By attaching that word to a human infant, the rumor completely strips away all personhood, all soul, all humanity.
It does. It reduces a human life to a high-end menu item,
Yeah.
a luxury commodity for those with enough power to afford it.
It is the absolute zenith of objectification. And I think it's really vital to note here that Osman is incredibly careful to maintain a clinical neutrality regarding the subjects of the rumor.
Very true.
He explicitly states he has no interest in sidelining, targeting, or accusing any specific ethnicities, political affiliations, or groups. He is looking at the architecture of the claim, not validating a specific crime.
Right, but his methodology here is really interesting. Osman admits very transparently that he wanted to fact-check this.
Yeah, the AI part.
Exactly. He went to advanced artificial intelligence, fed it the parameters of the rumor, and asked it to verify the claims. The AI scoured the data and came back saying there is absolute zero empirical evidence. It is completely unsubstantiated.
So, if this hyper-disciplined yogi knows the AI completely debunked it, why is he giving it oxygen?
That's the real question.
Why are we dedicating time to an internet-era ghost story?
Because the sheer lack of evidence, combined with the fierce persistence of the belief, is what actually fascinates him. This points to a deeper sociological phenomenon.
Like a collective obsession.
Exactly. Why do humans, century after century, persistently believe that the apex of the elite eat the innocent? This isn't just a 21st century internet phenomenon.
Oh, definitely not.
You can trace this directly back to the blood libel myths of the Middle Ages, or look at how the French revolutionaries genuinely believed the aristocracy were literally, not just metaphorically, bleeding the peasantry dry.
Right.
It taps into the deepest recesses of the collective unconscious. Sociologists often refer to this as the vampire archetype.
The vampire archetype. The deeply ingrained terror that those at the top of the societal pyramid don't just exploit your labor or your taxes, but that they must literally consume your biological life force to maintain their unnatural power and youth.
Exactly. So Osman's argument isn't that the rumor is a physical fact happening in secret subterranean restaurants. He is suggesting that the rumor's unyielding grip on the human psyche points to a much darker, energetic truth that populations are intuitively sensing.
Okay, so it's a metaphor for an energetic reality.
Right. He is proposing that this horrific, paranoid human projection is actually a distorted subconscious reflection of a cosmic reality.
Yeah.
People feel they're being consumed, but they're looking at the wrong predators.
Oh, wow. So he takes this modern paranoia, strips away the politicians and the billionaires, and maps it directly onto ancient theology.
He scales it way up.
He forces us to look at the historical texts of the mystics themselves, which brings us to the recorded visions of Ramakrishna Paramahansa.
And we need to establish the gravity of Ramakrishna. He is not a fringe esoteric blogger.
Yeah, he's foundational.
In 19th century India, he was a mystic giant. He's a pillar of modern Hindu mysticism. His experiences, his ecstatic states, and his visions are the bedrock texts for millions of practitioners worldwide.
And his primary devotion was to the tantric goddess Kali.
Right.
The specific vision Osman cites from Ramakrishna is incredibly cinematic, and it starts exactly the way you would want a divine encounter to start.
Very peaceful.
Yeah. Ramakrishna is standing on the banks of the river Ganges. He falls into a visionary state and sees a stunningly beautiful pregnant woman emerge from the waters. He instantly recognizes her as the goddess, the divine mother.
The ultimate creator.
Right. She steps onto the bank and gives birth to a child right in front of him. And initially, she exhibits this immense, radiant, overwhelming maternal love for the newborn.
It is the perfect archetype of the universe as a nurturing, life-giving force. It is the exact brand of comforting, maternal spirituality that the human ego desperately seeks out.
It's what we all want to believe.
Exactly. It is the universe telling you that you are loved and protected.
But then the turn happens. And it happens with breathtaking violence.
That's really shocking.
Without warning, her entire demeanor fractures. Her face becomes fierce, terrifying. She grabs the newborn child she just birthed, tears it apart with her bare hands, eats it whole, crunches the bones, and then calmly turns around, walks back into the Ganges, and disappears beneath the water.
The psychological dissonance of that image is meant to be staggering. The ultimate creator and the ultimate devourer are occupying the exact same space in the exact same fraction of a second.
It's a lot to process.
It is. Now, if you take that vision to the West, to the modern interpretations, the kind you will hear in high-end yoga studios or from prominent New Age figures, they will immediately sanitize it.
Oh, they definitely do. The love and light defense mechanism.
Precisely. They point to the terrifying blood-soaked iconography of tantric goddesses. You have depictions of Kali wearing a garland of freshly severed, bleeding human heads.
Right.
You have Chinnamasta, who is famously depicted holding her own decapitated head in one hand while drinking the jet of blood spurting from her own severed neck.
Which is an insane visual.
It's intense. But the standard, comfortable theological defense is that this is merely high-level psychological symbolism. They will tell you the skulls aren't actually human. They represent the skulls of slain demons.
They tell you the skulls represent your ego, your ignorance, your trauma. The goddess is terrifying because she is destroying the bad parts of your psyche so you can achieve enlightenment.
A good or lie.
The violence is actually just like aggressive therapy. She's doing you a favor.
That is the consensus we have built to make the ancient world palatable. But Osman offers a staunch, uncompromisingly literalist rebuttal to that sanitization.
He doesn't buy the metaphor.
Not at all. He looks at the specific parameters of Ramakrishna's vision and points out a glaring detail that everyone ignores. Ramakrishna did not see the beautiful goddess give birth to a demon. He saw her give birth to a human child, and he saw her eat a human child.
A human child.
Right. Osman posits that we are fundamentally misinterpreting these high-frequency entities by softening them to fit our moral framework. He argues that they are not psychological metaphors. They are literal high-frequency entities from a superior dimension, and to them, human beings are simply biological mass.
We are just another animal species in the ecosystem.
Biomass.
Right. And this is where Osman introduces his tiger analogy. And honestly, it is the most clarifying, chilling concept in this entire deep dive.
It really reframes everything.
He says, imagine a tiger moving through the jungle. It is magnificent. It is apex. We revere it. We film documentaries about it. We admire its power. But if you walk into that jungle and that tiger happens to be hungry, it is going to hunt you, kill you, and eat you.
And the crucial philosophical hinge of that analogy is that the tiger is not evil for killing you.
Exactly. The tiger doesn't have a vendetta against you. The tiger doesn't hate your family. It is completely indifferent to your existence as a person.
To the tiger, you are just a slow-moving package of protein.
Right. Osman is pointing out that we are constantly projecting human morality, our concepts of good, evil, malice, and empathy, onto cosmic forces that operate completely outside of that spectrum.
What Osman is doing is violently stripping away our anthropomorphism. We have a desperate evolutionary need for the gods to be human-like.
Because if they're like us, we can reason with them.
Exactly. If they are human-like, we can bargain with them. We can pray to them, offer them things, and appeal to their sense of mercy. But if these entities operate in higher dimensions, their relationship to us wouldn't be parental. It would be akin to our relationship to an ant farm or a school of fish.
I was trying to find a way to internalize this, and it feels like finding out we aren't the honored guests at the cosmic banquet. We are the poultry.
Yes, the poultry.
When you go to a restaurant and order a chicken sandwich, you don't feel malicious intent toward the chicken. You don't think about the chicken's hopes and dreams. You simply outrank it on the food chain so you consume it.
It's just a transaction of energy.
Right. Osman is stating, point blank, that humanity suffers from the grand delusion that we sit at the top of the food chain.
It completely dismantles the anthropocentric view of the universe. The comforting idea that all of creation was designed as a school for human soul growth is replaced by the apex predator cosmology.
Yeah.
The universe is a vast, hierarchical engine of consumption, and humanity occupies a very precarious middle rung.
So we have the visions and we have the theory. But if you're listening, you're probably wondering, if this apex predator cosmology is true, is it just restricted to mystical trances?
Right, because visions are subjective.
Exactly. The host of a vision can always just be accused of hallucinating.
Yeah.
So, is there any supposed historical evidence of these high-frequency entities crossing over and physically interacting with our reality in this way?
And Osman says yes.
Right. He doesn't just rely on the texts of mystics. He points to a historical military legend that is absolutely wild.
It really is. He directs our attention to an incredibly obscure but persistent legend from the era of the British imperial presence in India.
The British Empire.
Right. According to the account Osman references, a massive British army, and he specifically cites the number at 100,000 soldiers, was mobilized and marched into northern India with the explicit intent to invade and subdue a specific town.
And this wasn't just a strategic geographical target. This town was a concentrated hub of tantric worshippers.
Very specific target.
Yeah, these were people whose entire daily lives, their rituals, their singular focus were dedicated to the worship of these fierce yoginis, these destructive goddesses we've been discussing.
The setup is a classic, almost cinematic clash of paradigms. You have the ultimate expression of physical, imperial, materialistic dominance. 100,000-strong mechanized army representing the global superpower of the time, marching directly against a concentrated epicenter of esoteric high-frequency spiritual devotion.
It's the ultimate test of physical force versus energetic force.
Exactly.
I was reading this part of the historical account, and I kept waiting for the standard military defeat, a brilliant ambush, a disease outbreak, a tactical blunder, something grounded in history.
Sure, the usual reasons an army fails.
Right. But what happens defies all logical parameters. The entire army vanishes.
Just gone.
100,000 men wiped off the map without a single survivor to report back. But it's the specifics of the crime scene that Osman focuses on. Because the army didn't just wander off into the mountains and get lost.
No, they found the site.
Yeah. There were massive, pooling traces of blood found everywhere on the battlefield.
And that detail of the blood is crucial because it acts as the anchor to physical reality. It indicates that a violent kinetic interaction occurred.
It wasn't peaceful.
Right. This wasn't a peaceful mass hallucination or a dimensional portal opening up and gently swallowing them. There was a slaughter. However, the chilling paradox of the crime scene is what was missing.
The missing stuff is the craziest part.
It is. Despite the massive amounts of blood, there were no human bodies. There were no bones. There were no shredded uniforms, no leather boots, no wooden muskets, no brass buttons.
Nothing.
Every single trace of human existence and the human accoutrement was eradicated.
Except for one detail. And this is the detail that completely broke my brain when I read it in the sources.
Oh, horses.
The horses were left behind, entirely untouched, wandering aimlessly around this massive, bloody, empty battlefield. You have to ask yourself, if you are dealing with a standard magical event, a miracle, or divine wrath, usually everything gets wiped out.
It's indiscriminate, right?
Right. God floods the earth, everyone drowns, a meteor hits, everything burns. Why would a localized apocalyptic event meticulously spare the horses?
If we attempt to analyze the logistics of this legend through the quantum lens Osman has provided, it begins to make a terrifying kind of sense.
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, the sheer volume of blood combined with the total absence of bones and clothing implies an absolute consumption. But not consumption by terrestrial scavengers like wolves or vultures.
Because they leave bones.
Exactly. They leave bones to leave metal. This implies instantaneous dematerialization. The physical matter of the soldiers and their equipment was instantaneously converted into energy by higher dimensional entities.
I was trying to come up with an analogy for how this would work, and it's like a massive interdimensional centrifuge.
Oh, centrifuge, yeah.
Because if you put a vial of blood in a centrifuge, it spins so fast that the heavier red blood cells are forced to the bottom, separating entirely from the lighter plasma. It's a mechanism of pure physical separation based on density.
Right.
So if these entities targeted the specific energetic frequency of human matter, the universe essentially spun the human protein out of our dimension, leaving the heavier, untargeted biological matter, the horses, behind.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. It connects perfectly back to the tiger analogy we discussed earlier.
The predator focus.
Right. A predator only exerts energy to consume what it specifically hunts. An anteater consumes the ants. It doesn't consume the dirt surrounding the anthill.
Yeah.
If humans are the targeted biomass for these high-frequency entities, the horses are entirely irrelevant to their diet. The horses are merely the vehicles the food rode in on.
It's the ultimate terrifying reversal of our earthly food chain. On this planet, we consider ourselves the unquestioned masters of livestock. We ride the horses into battle and we eat the cattle.
We decide who lives and dies.
Exactly. In this legend, for one horrific afternoon, humanity was instantly demoted to livestock.
And the legend concludes with a very pragmatic historical note. The British Empire never attempted to invade that town again.
I mean, I wouldn't either.
Right, from a purely tactical standpoint, if a general loses 100,000 men and cannot find a single body to bury, a single piece of brass to melt down, they concede that they have encountered a force that entirely supersedes their military technology.
Yeah.
You don't fight a math problem you can't solve. You retreat.
It is a phenomenal, gripping story, but we have to take a breath here because it leaves the listener in an incredibly bleak place.
It's a heavy, heavy concept.
If we accept the premise of this cosmology, if the universe is populated by interdimensional entities that can dematerialize an entire army and who view human beings as the cosmic equivalent of veal, then what is the point of anything?
Why even get out of bed?
Right. Why does Osman even bother waking up? How does he survive, let alone spend 18 hours a day training to help others, in a cosmos that is inherently hostile or, at best, completely indifferent to us as prey? The existential dread of that worldview should be paralyzing.
It should be, yeah. And that tension is exactly where we see the true functional paradox of Osman's life's work. It's how he hacks the very system he describes.
Hacking the system.
Exactly. He doesn't take this terrifying cosmology as a reason to fall into nihilism or despair. Instead, he uses his understanding of these ruthless mechanics to fuel a highly regimented, remarkably scientific approach to healing in the 21st century.
Which is such a weird pivot.
It is. He moves directly from the esoteric horror of the cosmos to practical, everyday symptom management.
He introduces this concept, and it is honestly brilliant marketing. He offers what he calls the $5 anxiety fix.
Right, the $5 fix.
He explicitly markets it as being cheaper than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You go from the dematerialization of armies to a $5 fix for modern anxiety.
But the mechanism behind that fix is deeply tied to the advanced quantum entanglement we discussed at the beginning of this deep dive.
The spooky action, right?
He believes that through his 50 years of relentless discipline, those 18-hour days of sensory deprivation, he has trained his bioenergy to operate at a frequency that can interact with the subtle energetic fields of others across vast distances.
So he is taking his highly regulated, weaponized energy field and intentionally entangling it with the chaotic, frayed, anxious energy of a client sitting in an office building halfway across the world, forcing their nervous system to regulate.
Precisely. It is biological and energetic regulation via remote resonance. And what is most fascinating here is his extreme pragmatism.
Pragmatism in mysticism is rare.
It's very rare. Osman isn't promising you spiritual enlightenment for your $5. He isn't promising that he can throw up an energy shield to protect you from the fierce goddesses or save your soul from the cosmic food chain.
No grand promises.
Right. He is offering biological symptom management. He's essentially hacking the exact same high-frequency physics that the deities supposedly use for consumption, but he is channeling that frequency toward structural healing and nervous system regulation.
It's like he understands the terrifying, brutal source code of the universe, but he's figured out how to use it to write a temporary patch for human anxiety.
Yeah, software patch, yes.
And his business model reflects this deep realism. He has a balance of mass accessibility and premium specialized care. He offers a totally free, power-packed, 5-minute protocol on his website and on YouTube.
And 5 minutes is key there.
Right. He explicitly states he spent decades honing this specific protocol so that busy, modern people with jobs, mortgages, and kids can get actual, tangible results in just 5 minutes without needing to meditate in a cave.
He deeply respects the modern constraint of time. He knows his clients aren't monks. They don't have 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
However, for his direct one-on-one interventions, specifically for the critical care and terminal illness cases we mentioned earlier, he is very explicit that his services are not inexpensive.
He charges a premium.
He does. He likens himself directly to a premium medical specialist. You aren't just paying for an hour of his time. You are paying for the 50 years of hyper-focused expertise and the 18-hour days it took to forge that capability.
But the part that really grounds all of these interdimensional theories is his medical disclaimer. He hammers it home repeatedly.
It's so important that he does that.
It really is. He states over and over that his work is entirely complementary. It is absolutely not a replacement for traditional allopathic medical treatment.
That disclaimer is vital. It anchors his incredibly wild quantum claims firmly back to physical, logical reality.
Right, he's not telling you to skip the doctor.
Exactly. He isn't a fanatic telling people to abandon their oncologists or throw away their life-saving medication. He deeply acknowledges the limits and the mechanical realities of the physical body.
The analogy I keep coming back to is that Osman is offering the software patch to work seamlessly alongside the hardware fix.
Right.
If a patient has cancer, traditional medicine like chemotherapy or surgery is the hardware fix. It's physically attacking the corrupted cells and cutting out the tumor.
The physical mechanics.
Right. Osman is offering the software patch, the bioenergetic regulation, to help the body's entire operating system withstand the massive trauma of the hardware fix. He is a profound realist.
He has to be.
When your entire career is specializing in critical care, you see death every single day. You watch the physical body fail. You watch the mechanics break down. I think that completely explains why he refuses to sugarcoat the universe.
That makes total sense.
He sees the absolute brutality of biology firsthand, so he has no problem accepting the brutality of theology.
He synthesizes the two seamlessly.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that nature, whether you are looking at it through a microscope or through a mystical vision, is an endless, ruthless cycle of consumption and destruction.
The universe eats itself to survive.
Exactly. But within that terrifying cycle, he has carved out a microscopic space of intense personal discipline where he can manipulate those forces to provide temporary relief, healing, and balance for the human organism. It is a remarkably clear-eyed, if somewhat grim, philosophy of service.
It really is. Okay, let's take a breath and recap the sheer staggering distance we have covered in this deep dive.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started with the jarring persistence of the veal rumor, exploring the deep sociology of why human psychology inherently clings to the idea of elites consuming the innocent, tracing it back to the vampire archetype.
We then followed Osman's logic as he mapped that modern paranoia onto ancient texts, specifically exploring the literalist reading of Ramakrishna's vision of the goddess Kali.
Forcing us to confront the disturbing duality of the divine mother who births and then immediately devours her own creation.
Right. We analyzed the chilling historical legend of 100,000 mechanized British soldiers being instantaneously dematerialized by tantric forces.
Leaving behind an empty, blood-soaked battlefield with only the horses remaining, totally upending our understanding of our place in the food chain.
And finally, we grounded all of that immense cosmic terror in the pragmatic, quantum-entangled reality of a blind yogi using a half-century of grueling discipline to offer a $5 anxiety fix and critical complementary bioenergy care.
It is a journey that absolutely shatters the comfort zone of traditional, sanitized spirituality. It forces you to look at the machinery of the universe without the comforting filter of human morality.
It demands that we entirely question our assumptions about our inherent safety and our assumed dominance in the cosmic hierarchy.
So as you go about the rest of your day, as you wrap up your commute or finish your workout, and especially when you step outside tonight and look up at the vastness of the stars, I want to leave you with one final lingering concept to mull over.
The big question.
The next time you look up at that infinite, glittering, silent expanse, ask yourself, in the grand scheme of the universe, are you the observer or are you the snack?